So I call this work The Social Life of DNA after the work of an anthropologist named Marjana Padarai, who has published a book now 30 plus years ago called The Social Life of Things. And he suggested to us that it was by following things in motion, right, that we can illuminate their human and social context. So if I wanted to understand, following a Padarai, why genetic ancestry testing was significant, not only for individual identity and family history, but beyond these things as well. Perhaps I could do this by following forms of genetic analysis around. So the social life of DNA for me means two things. It means the way in which forms of genetic analysis travel between sites, social sites and domains, which I'll say a little bit more about, and the multiple uses to which one type of genetic analysis is put, in this case, genetic ancestry testing, which I'll also say a little bit about. So we tend to think of forms of genetic testing and analysis in these domains, right? So we typically, I think researchers, regulatory bodies, those of us as individual consumers often, social scientists, distinguish between medical genetics, forensic or criminal justice genetics, ancestry, genealogical, or what we call recreational genetics, and genetic analysis that might be used in a sort of family court setting for family verification or paternity. What I found in the course of talking to people about genetic testing more generally and genetic ancestry testing is that the way that individuals understand genetic testing really blurs these boundaries, right? And that genetics has a social life and social power because it has the ability to work sometimes simultaneously in all of these domains at once. So a woman I call Sarah said to me, "We think breast cancer runs in our family. Now that I understand my African ancestry test, which is a genetic ancestry company that I'll talk about this evening, the difference between the mother's line and the father's line and all that, I have a better sense of what the genetic counselor at my doctor's office was telling me." Martin said to me, "You know, I was never really interested in genetic science or the genome or whatever until I heard about these genetic genealogy tests. After I took my test, I wanted to learn everything about genetics. I started reading genetics articles in the newspaper, science magazines, scientific journals, and those sorts of things." So what I want to suggest here just briefly, because I want to tell you more about the sort of social travels of this company that I studied over a decade, is in effect that one category of genetic testing often draws authority from its association with other forms or domains of testing, and that individuals' experiences or attitudes about one form of testing inform or legitimate the broader authority of genetics. So for those of us who are interested in health disparities and in medical genetics in particular, I would want to say that for African Americans often, and for some communities of color, that genetic ancestry testing becomes a threshold moment, the first moment where people are thinking about genetics ever. So they might have an experience like Martin, "I've never thought about genetics and now I'm deeply interested in it." Or people like Sarah who have an experience in a clinical or a medical encounter that is informed by her interest and experience with genetic ancestry testing, which is to say that we need to understand the full social life, right, of DNA and how people think about it in these various domains if we want to understand how it's important and how we can use it with efficacy in a medical or a clinical encounter.